I'm Captain Federico Calderon from the Webb County Sheriff's Office. I've been working for the Sheriff's Office for about almost 18 and a half years. I started off as a patrol deputy and worked my way through investigations and eventually became an investigation supervisor.
Supervision requires an overview that detectives don't have to have. The commander is pursuing everything. If you do it correctly, it consumes you. Calderon is consumed by it, just like I was.
I'm on my way right now. I'm getting in the car.
The call came in on a holiday, so I wasn't at work. But being a supervisor for investigations, you're always working.
To play the game, you've got to be in the game. Sitting behind a desk, you're not going to learn anything. Get out there where the action is.
The crime scene. This is an area which is a sort of a farm road that only the residents that live out there would be traveling on.
It's not a place you would be expected to get called to for a crime scene for a potential murder.
14-35, 14-35, code 1.
The victim was lying face down.
What do we got?
Fix a female. No ID.
There was very obvious head trauma, so she was a little bit harder to identify.
Calderon has the same problem anyone does looking at a gunshot wound to the head in a female. It's just a mass of blood. You can't tell where the hit was or whether it was front to back or back to front. You can't tell until you get him in a morgue.
There was something very unique in this case that the victim was clenching a bag of candy in their hand.
It is often referred to as the death grip, but in reality, it's all the muscles exerting themselves at the same instant, because the nervous system has been disconnected from the brain. So they have this grip that cannot be broken. Also at the crime scene are 3 expended casings from a semi-automatic pistol.
The shell casings, they weren't the steel case or the aluminum case. It's a premium brass cartridge. It stood out.
They're 40 caliber, 40 S&W. That caliber is so effective, it is commonly used by law enforcement and by federal agents. It is the kind of ammunition that an average street criminal wouldn't even consider obtaining because it's expensive. So it says to Calderon, whoever this is knows guns.
Good afternoon, sir.
So the next step, of course, is to speak to the person who found the remains. So Calderon questions the rancher.
He said that he saw a vehicle driving around the ranch road, and he assumed that that truck played a role in whatever was happening there.
I didn't see her right away, but I did get a license plate number.
That is a remarkable fact that never happens. Witnesses normally can't tell you what color the car was. This guy's descriptive. He said it's a black pickup with heavily tinted windows, relatively new, nice condition, clean, and this is the plate number. Texas plates. Well, that's a great witness.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Calderon's next step is to go to the morgue and see exactly what we're looking for.
Autopsies are so important. They give us a window into the final moments of that person's life, and they tell us how and why that person died.
They're able to clearly see that she has 3 gunshot wounds to the head, administered close range, less than 18 inches, and further, a gunshot wound of the wrist. If you think about watching someone eating a bag of M&Ms, they often hold it in their hand, and they raise it to their mouth and dump in a few M&Ms. When she takes those rounds, One of them exits her head and goes through her wrist. And that's why she's got that bag in her head. She was eating M&Ms when she's executed by somebody.
She didn't expect what was coming.
So Calderon asked the coroner, what else can you tell me about this girl?
There was a toxicology screen done by the doctor, and it did come back to narcotics. We ran her fingerprints, and she was identified. Our victim was Melissa Ramirez. She is somebody who our investigators and our jail staff was familiar with. She was a habitual drug user who was involved in prostitution as well.
So now it was going to be a challenge for law enforcement trying to find who did this, right? Given the work she did. She's the perfect victim.
There are people in the world who prey upon sex workers because they're easily obtained. You don't have to force your victim into the car. They just get in. So your suspect pool has grown well beyond associates and known persons. But Calderon has something going for him in this case. He's got a license plate of a truck that was inches away from this dead body.
The plan was to identify that vehicle and track down the owner of the truck.
They run the plate, and Calderon is speechless. The registration comes back to a local police officer, Gustavo Lopez. That's who owns the truck. Good God, how could this be? What is he up to next to this body? Calderon has a suspect who is a police officer named Gustavo Lopez. He looks into his history with the department and finds some things that are rather questionable. Lopez tends to be aggressive with the public. A number of complaints had been received about him, and one was so serious, he was placed on probation.
That was a little bit concerning, considering the circumstances.
Let's have a conversation, Gustavo, and see what you have to say. You question a police officer the same way you question anyone else. There is no professional courtesy, particularly when you're considered a suspect, and Calderon has a very good reason to believe he is.
By the time we got around to talking to him, he knew what we were looking for him in reference to.
Was that a piece of property that I was going to buy?
Okay.
He said, I took my 2 kids with me out to that spot to show them a piece of ground I was thinking about buying to see what the view would be like. What body are you talking about?
The body, it was not hidden and it was not hard to see. The idea that a law enforcement officer would have completely not seen that was difficult to work around.
But Calderon checks with the real estate company and confirms that Lopez has been in contact with them for weeks about the piece of ground adjacent to the eyewitness's property.
I generally don't believe in coincidences, but at the end of the day, we didn't have anything on him to continue with him being a lead suspect. I think, in general, criminal investigations can feel overwhelming. You have to develop your own information, and you have to go out there and talk to family members.
Nobody likes it. It's ugly. It's nasty. But you're the boss. It's your responsibility. Take the responsibility and go deal with it.
Cuando entraron a la galería de mi casa, lo primero que me dijeron, encontramos a su hija fallecida. Sentí que se me fue la sangre. Grité y les dije, pásenle para adentro. No quería que me escucharan afuera llorar. Estaba llorando fuerte.
We talked to Melissa's mom. She was hurting, emotionally and physically. But she gave us a lot of good information about Melissa.
Yo crecí en Nuevo Laredo y de acá pues nacieron mis hijos. Acá se criaron. Ella es la más chiquita de mis hijas. Melissa era una muchacha muy alegre. Le gustaba ir a la escuela. Ella decía que quería ser doctora.
She would always have like this good attitude always, and always a happy and good feeling whenever we were together.
Oh my gosh, she had a really particular laugh. Even if somebody would get mad at her, she would say something so you can laugh at it and be like, oh, you can't get mad at her. She did have 2 children. She was the best mother. She made sure those kids had a good family and a good place for them. She loved her kids a lot.
Fue ya de grande cuando se me salió del carril, como dice. Ya después me di cuenta que, pues, por una amiga que empezó a andar mal.
She has an arrest 10 years ago for prostitution. She's also addicted to narcotics.
She would always keep her things to herself. It was really quite difficult for us to help her to see what was really wrong with her.
Many sex workers have a story that begins when they become involved in narcotics. They need money. The only thing left for them is to sell their own body.
The last time I saw her, I was there at my mother-in-law's house, and she wanted to confess something, but she didn't know how to say it.
Fue el 14 de agosto, cuando estábamos ahí en la casa platicando y de repente se sentó en la sala y me dijo, me van a matar, no van a hacer así. Y le dije, no me digas eso, Melissa.
There's this constant drumbeat of violence that's always on the edges of being a sex worker. You are at risk all the time. So Calderon gets a lot of information about Melissa, but what he doesn't get is a solid lead and a possible suspect.
So, in the lack of any leads or evidence, we had to develop our own.
So like any good detective, Fred Calderon went to the source. He wanted to get down to where Melissa was working.
There's a stretch of road, San Bernardo. It's in an older part of town, a bit more run down. It's known for the area that the prostitutes frequent.
Everybody knows if you drive around San Bernardo late night, you're gonna see people picking up people.
Calderon wants to speak to the girls to see if anybody knows Melissa, to see who she hangs out with. Did anybody see her go with anybody?
It was like they say old-fashioned police work. It was exactly that. Driving up on the streets, walking up and down, trying to talk to these people. Even though, for the most part, we're plainclothes, we still looked like cops.
Nothing you can really tell me about that?
That's just her.
It's the last type of person they want to talk to.
Oh, hey. They know who the cops are. They can feel it.
After we explain we're investigating a crime that happened to somebody who was potentially in their same shoes, some people chose to talk to us. Through one of the field interviews, the name Claudine Lueta came up.
She was a sex worker. The same situation of Melissa, that she has addictions. They were really good friends. They work in the same area in San Bernardo.
Which means she could be an eyewitness to who picked up Melissa the night she was killed.
So we attempted to ask around, where is she? Where can we find her?
But Calderon has no luck. No one seems to know where Claudine is. But he does come up with a few names of male customers who are relatively well known among the prostitute crowd on San Bernardo Avenue. So he gathers up these names, gets associated license plate numbers, and he has a plan in mind. His plan includes the United States Border Patrol.
They have assets that read license plates, and they have databases with unique information that may not be the same information we have or that the state does.
He literally can track every car and where it moves in a 30 square mile area around the city of Laredo, Texas. So this system is quite sophisticated. Calderon is going to provide the list of individuals to Special Agent Juan David Ortiz, who is a supervisor in the surveillance system controlled by the Border Patrol.
We gave them these names, and I said, see what you can come up with on them. Could be previous criminal history that's strictly federal related, whether it be a license plate crossing or who was inside the vehicle with them when they went through the checkpoint or through the bridge or something. You never know.
They search the system for the plate numbers and the individual names. And they get no result. But at the end of the day, an officer who works the San Bernardo Avenue area calls Calderon and says, I have this guy. He was seen with Melissa Ramirez on the night she disappeared, and his name is Dominic Ortega. Now that's really interesting information.
He said that sometimes she'd go to his house, so we felt like he was definitely a lead we had to go after.
And when Calderon plugs his name into the police database, things get really interesting. Mr. Ortega lives less than a mile from where Melissa's body was found. Well, Mr. Ortega, you could be the one. So Captain Calderon receives a tip about a client of Melissa Ramirez named Dominic Ortega.
He lived on the same part of town where the body was discovered.
Calderon goes to speak to Ortega, where his job is,
Dominic Ortega?
What's this about?
and discovers the encounter to be rather confrontive.
We have reason to believe that you were with Melissa the night she disappeared.
But when Calderon tells him that Melissa Ramirez has been murdered, he changes his attitude completely.
He said they weren't strangers. He had picked her up before. She had been to his house.
He is not only a regular customer of Melissa's, he's also her friend.
Can you tell us about that night?
Ortega explains that he picked her up on a date, and they went back to his house, and she got high. And then she passed out.
He obviously hired her for a different reason.
Finally, she woke up, and by this moment, Dominic Ortega had changed his mind. He just took her home. That's the last time he ever saw her.
He was 100% cooperative, and we had information from his employer that he was at a distant location. So we felt that it was very unlikely that this was a person who had committed the crime.
Over the next few days, Calderon feeds a few more names and license plates to Agent Ortiz of the Border Patrol, but they don't work out either. So this case is beginning to lose its force.
Okay. You write it down.
An unsolved murder is always a bad thing, but we were trying and we were exhausting every lead we had.
And then September 13th 10 days after Melissa was killed, another horrible event occurs in Laredo, Texas.
Web County 911.
I'm on Highway 25, and I've got a female in the grass laying, and I don't know if she's unconscious. She's breathing, but she's got blood all over the grass over here. So y'all better send a paramedic.
Initially, it came in as an auto pedestrian accident. They call it an autoped.
As soon as the EMTs arrive at that scene, EMTs say, no. This isn't from being hit by a car. This woman's been shot in the head.
I crossed paths with the ambulance, so we sent investigators to the hospital. We had hopes that she would be able to tell us anything, something. We began processing the scene. Even from just looking at the crime scene, you could tell that something horrible had happened there. Her property was scattered everywhere. It looked like there were a stretch of drag marks where she tried to crawl after she got injured, leaving the trail of blood.
And then he sees something else that alarms him to no end.
Take a look at that.
3 .40 caliber Smith & Wesson expended casings. It's about a mile away from where Melissa Ramirez was found.
Having 2 similar cases on the same stretch of road with a very similar weapon, that was out of the ordinary. We felt like we were probably dealing with the same person who had done that to Melissa.
2, 3.
It had all the markings and indications that this was the beginning of a serial killer. I know we have a problem.
This time there's a purse. And the officers at the scene discover that this is, in fact, Claudine Luera, the woman Calderon couldn't find, who is a close friend of Melissa Ramirez. What is going on here? Who might be responsible for this?
Doesn't have a cell phone here.
The purse also contained a prepaid track phone, and it wasn't locked.
Phones can be very helpful. It can tell us a lot about a person.
Could you bag this for us, please?
Calderon is really anxious to speak to the victim, but that's when he learns from the hospital that the victim is never going to speak again.
Sadly, when she was taken to the emergency room, they tried to start to work on her, is when she expired and she passed.
So once again, you have to know your victim, and you have to go out there and talk to family members. That can end up being the investigation key that unlocks what you're after.
When she passed away, I think the whole block heard me yell. It's the worst news. Those words will never leave my mind. Having to hear them say, like, yes, we can confirm that it is Claudine Luera. My first thought was, I need to get to Ciara.
It was a Friday morning. I was working at the Plasma Center downtown. My manager comes to the back and she goes, "Hey, Ciara, there's someone here to see you." And she was like, "It's your aunt. She wants to speak to you." And I peek my head out and I could just see like their body language, like how they were looking at me. "No, please don't, please don't."
Claudine's family is able to tell Calderon a very sad story indeed. She was educated, she was bright, and slowly her life unraveled.
Claudine has 5 children. Ciara was 2 years old at the time when she had the first set of twins. And then, lo and behold, she got pregnant right away with the second set of twins. And then we started noticing with the first set of twins some characteristics.
And I think getting the diagnosis of autism really hit her hard. I think that really just, brought her down into a depression. She started getting more to like prescription drugs. And then in 2009, we knew something was going on.
She was like heavily addicted to heroin at the time, and it was hard. I wanted her to do better. I wanted things to be different. I wanted my mom.
Eventually, the 5 children were taken away from her, and she wound up on San Bernardo Avenue as a sex worker.
The day that Melissa's body had been found, my mom actually called me and she spent the night. And we hadn't spent the night together since I was like 13 years old. And I was really in shock. I was like, okay, something's wrong. I just know her saying she feared her life. She knew Melissa wasn't gonna be the only one. Little did I know then that that would be the last time that I'd ever see her again.
To learn that your mother has suddenly been ripped away from you, absolutely devastating. And to make matters worse, now we have 2 victims working in the same industry, killed in exactly the same way in similar locations. And no one has a clue as to who might be responsible.
When the second case happened, Claudine, it was like what is going on?
We had a serial killer in our midst. He's targeting these people. He's targeting sex workers. And I'm telling the sheriff's department, you guys need to find this killer or there's gonna be more. There's gonna be more.
We were feeling the pressure from the community and our bosses as well. We're trying to track down every bit of every lead that we had.
Calderon goes back to check with his tech team regarding the contents of the track phone that Claudine Luera had in her purse.
At that point, we discovered a picture of Claudine with another male, taken recently.
There are a number of text messages between Claudine and an individual known as Hector Vega on the night of her murder. They look up Hector Vega. Vega is a drug addict. Vega's committed aggravated assault in the past. Could he be our guy? Absolutely.
So we got back to work and we started looking for him. We have vehicles parked at his house, and at some point he shows up and he realizes that there's some cop cars and he takes off.
If they had any doubts about Hector Vega being a possible suspect, it's been erased by his flight. Innocent people don't run, and Hector is running. Detective Calderon summons a number of cruisers to his location.
Give me your location for 14.
They try to pursue Hector in his car.
Highway speeds inside the city aren't anything that anybody needs to be doing, ever.
He's weaving in and out of streets, making hard turns. And all of a sudden,
we couldn't see him anymore. The officer said, hey, he's gone. They disengaged, and we tried to find him using other means.
Hector's in the wind. Is that frustrating? Oh my. Yes, it is. Calderon is well aware if the suspect moves across the border, his case is doomed.
It's not until the next day we get a call at the police department. Someone wanted to come forward and talk.
Well, guess who it was? Mr. Hector Vega. The runaway guy and skilled stunt driver is now sitting in a police station by his own volition. What happened? Calderon asked Hector, "Why did you run?" "Oh, man, I had drugs on me. So I started to run. And then I thought about Claudine. I heard what happened to Claudine. I was friends with her."
He started telling us that they hung out and, used drugs.
We met up for a bit last night, and then she went back out to San Bernardo.
I figured you guys put two and two together, and you think I did this, and I didn't do this.
He said that was the last time he had seen her until he heard that she had been found dead. He was genuinely disturbed and distraught. I'm sure it was difficult for him to try and understand that when she left his company, she ended up getting killed shortly after.
Calderon is experienced and has talked to a lot of people, both suspects and otherwise, and Hector comes across as legitimate. He's not the best person in the world, but he's not a killer.
It's difficult getting your hopes up and then at the end, falling short. But it's something that happens in any criminal investigation, and you just got to pick up the pieces, reassess, and come up with a new game plan and go forward again.
There's still this maniac serial killer running around killing everyone. And if he's done two, he's going to do more. You know that the person responsible for this picks up women on San Bernardo Avenue. We need to surveil San Bernardo Avenue.
We were driving up and down, looking for anything out of the ordinary.
They see some different cars they haven't seen before. They pass those plate numbers on to the United States Border Patrol by and through Supervisor Ortiz, and nothing comes of it. Nobody emerges as anybody with a history, anybody with anything.
Calderon did a great job in a case of this magnitude. He was relentless, following leads and interviewing people and doing what any good investigator is doing. But being in this line of work for 28 years, sometimes you need a lucky break. In this case, that's what he got.
It is September 14th, day 11 in the investigation, when a Texas state trooper pulls into a gas station to fuel his car.
It's sometime around 9 p.m., out of nowhere. This female comes running to him dressed in jeans, and she doesn't have a blouse or shirt on.
Oh, excuse me. What?
And she's screaming, "He's trying to kill me." The trooper puts his hand in his gun and looks behind her for threats and sees none.
He deploys his body cam.
She's terrified. She's shaking uncontrollably.
Her eyes are just wide open, speaking real fast, unintelligible.
Ahorita te ayudo. Just tranquila.
At this point in time, he's thinking that he's interacting with a drug addict or some homeless person who's just talking gibberish, right? But the more he talks to her, things start to get serious real quick.
Me sacó la pistola y me quería subir y me empecé a gritar, "Help me, help me."
A guy just pointed a gun at her face.
¿Cómo te llamas?
Erica.
Erica, ¿qué?
Well, now, what does Erica Pena do? She's a sex worker on San Bernardo Avenue. Oh, my.
Being aware that there is an ongoing investigation for somebody killing sex workers, he makes the connection.
Just relax, take deep breaths. So
2 and 2 equals 4. She is a living witness to whoever this killer is, who's already killed 2 and just now attempted to kill a 3rd one.
De repente saca las pistolas y yo abrí la puerta. Help, help.
Erica Pena has escaped somebody who just pointed a gun at her face.
I'm very scared.
Don't worry, you're.
I'm afraid, sir.
She is hyperventilating. She's got fear and adrenaline that are going through her.
The girl they killed, Melissa Ramirez, we started talking about her. He got very weird all of a sudden, very nervous.
He did, okay.
She mentioned Melissa's name, Claudine's name, seeing as who she was and kind of the circumstances. The trooper thought that it might have something to do with what me and the ranger were investigating. So he called.
She knows the victim, the girl, the deceased girl. With that in mind, I said, you know what? This probably might be a lead. Yeah, you want me to take over that?
Calderon, he wants to talk to her right now.
The trooper shows up and she is crying. She's scared. She's convinced that, someone's coming after her to kill her. So I go inside, get her a shirt from somewhere inside the station, and she was able to tell her story. She begins telling us how she knew this client of hers by the name of David, and that David had picked her up on San Bernardo, the same area Melissa and Claudine worked and frequented.
She gets in the truck with him. He's having to take you to my house because my wife and kids are away for the weekend. So off they go. Once they get inside, they're just talking.
And the conversation at some point came up about Melissa and Claudine.
And she said his whole demeanor changed.
She says that he was grabbing the back of his neck and that he was making weird noises. And she started feeling really uneasy.
David has a look, like she described, just a real scary look.
Erica felt like he might have had something to do with it, and she started, freaking out, for lack of a better word.
She has this overwhelming sense of nausea, sick feeling in her stomach comes over her.
Y donde yo salgo para afuera me quiero vomitar. Estoy bien. That's when I knew it's the best que te va a actuar. Go, get out, get out.
She's starting to think, how can I get out of this? And without trying to tip him off, she's asking, take me somewhere.
He suggested stopping near a gas station so she could get something to eat and maybe settle her stomach.
He decides to stop in the back of the gas station, on the side of the street, in the dark. She starts at this moment thinking, it's him. He killed Melissa. He killed Claudine. It's him. He's telling her, stop freaking out.
You're not getting out. You're not getting out.
And as she starts to reach for that door handles, when he pulls that handgun out, brings it across his body and points it to her face. She was going to be the next victim.
She became frantic and tried to escape. He said that he was trying to hold on to her and he grabbed her by the shirt.
El vato apuntándome con la esa. Así. Abrí la puerta. Estoy gritando. Help! Help! Come here.
He pulled a shirt directly off her back, and she ran to the gas station where she sees this Texas state trooper fueling his car.
I'm glad we were able to help you.
We felt like we might be finally getting the lead we were after and that we were looking for a David. She tells us that we need to be looking out for a white pickup truck.
And you know where the house is at, right?
No, pero mi amor, vive bien. Vive bien. Quisiera que mi mamá tuviera esa casa.
She doesn't know the address of the house, but she knows the general vicinity.
She has a couple of landmarks in mind. I felt that we could reasonably drive around out there and try and locate the address. So we went to that specific neighborhood and we started looking around.
Ojalá Dios quiera queremos.
And we had several other investigators and deputies in the car to provide security.
¿Lista?
And all of a sudden she says, wait.
A ver, esa es la casa. Es that house.
That's the house right there.
Están los steps.
Calderon's headlights come across the sidewalk, and the vomit is on the sidewalk.
And that ended up being what broke the case wide open. So once we got the address, we're checking databases, both public and police databases, to see who are we dealing with.
And when he sees the name, he is absolutely stunned into silence. It's not just someone he knows. It's someone who's working alongside him in this very case. Calderon goes back to the station, runs the address, and now he has the name. He never could have predicted what he finds. The ghost that Calderon has been seeking is in fact Juan David Ortiz, a supervisor with the United States Border Patrol and the agent working the case with Calderon.
He was a cop. That completely surprised all of us.
He would have been the last one that any of us would have ever imagined. It is scary to think that he was in there listening, watching, observing as the case was investigated.
Juan David Ortiz, who is now 35 years of age, was born in Brownsville, Texas, and raised by a single mother. He joined the United States Navy out of high school and was trained as a corpsman.
He had been deployed in 2003, had seen action in Iraq. He was a medic for his Marine unit.
When he gets out of the service, he decides to join the Border Patrol. He has an impeccable record. He shows empathy for immigrants coming across the border, migrants. He treats people from suffering from exposure or being in the desert. People call him Doc because of his skills.
There was nothing whatsoever, based on what we saw on Juan David Ortiz's background, that this would have been foreseeable. His record was clean.
This guy was your Laredoan neighbor. He had a steady job, he had a nice house, he had a family, went to church on Sundays. Not what you would think of when you think a serial killer.
Humans are complicated, sometimes frighteningly so. How does one go from being an all-American war hero into a psychotic killer?
So we're not dealing with an ordinary criminal. It presents a whole new dynamic.
We're dealing with a Border Patrol agent who we know carries a duty weapon that's a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson, and we know that they get issued federal cartridge ammunition.
So he's using his duty weapon to carry out his rage against sex workers. He was prepared to drop victim number 3 when she interfered with that by escaping his custody. He is not going to stop. They're going to have to stop him.
The race was finding him before more victims and more bodies started to stack up.
We had the security team at his house to see if anyone came back home. That wasn't happening. Nobody got close to the house. We put out information about the plates associated with that white pickup truck being driven by Juan David Ortiz, and that he was being looked for as a person of interest in connection with Melissa and Claudine's murder.
Ortiz is not an idiot. He knows he's being looked for, so he is running.
Two hours almost after Erica's escape, we get notified that a trooper is at a gas station off of San Bernardo.
State Trooper Bradshaw sees that truck matching that description parked in front of a dumpster to the left side of the gas station.
He looks through the window of the gas station, and who does he see? None other than Juan David Ortiz.
He calls it in, and Trooper Obregon also pulls in. That's the truck right there. He walked inside.
He walked inside?
Yeah.
3845. I'm with Bradshaw. Making contact.
Now you're about to confront someone who is undoubtedly armed. You don't want to confront him in that store. You're putting the clerk at risk and you're putting everyone else. You're going to wait for him to come out.
Juan David Ortiz walks out of the Stripes store.
Stand up! Turn around! Turn around!
They are giving him orders.
Turn around!
Juan David Ortiz is not following orders.
Turn around! Turn around! Get on your knees! Turn around! Okay.
He starts acting like he's scared and he doesn't know why they want to talk to him.
Okay, I'm gonna explain to you. This truck right here is matching with the potential, with the murders that's been happening within the past 2 weeks. We just need for you to cooperate with us, okay?
It's a very high stress situation.
Just turn around.
Ortiz is thinking about what he's going to do.
Make my way, just turn around and make my way this way, okay? Hey!
And he sees the opportunity and he makes a run for it.
Hey!
Our serial killer is finally within reach. You can run, Mr. Ortiz, but you cannot hide.
David Ortiz! Come out! State police! Just turn around.
Juan David Ortiz has finally been located.
Hey!
But he seems to have no interest in giving himself up.
Hey!
Ortiz sees an opportunity and he bolts. He's able to get that little lead on these two troopers. And they lose sight of him running towards the parking lot of the Ava Hotel.
He went inside here. He's in here.
They stop their foot chase and they ask for backup.
He's in here, bro. Yeah.
Ortiz has run into a parking garage. This particular parking garage has several levels. Is he going to steal a car? What's he going to do?
So they think he's inside the building or what?
They're pretty sure. Bueno. A couple minutes after is when I show up with the ranger and the rest of the investigators. Immediately, we set up a perimeter.
We need a unit on that side, bro.
We block off all the exits of the building and of that city block.
So now that they know he's contained in this garage, they call a SWAT team.
Jeans. Khaki shirt, bro.
A parking garage is a difficult place to search. They want people with the right equipment and the right protective gear to search this premise.
We're not going in. Let me just get the final. Okay.
While we're organizing the SWAT team to search for Ortiz in the Ava Hotel parking lot, we get a call from a passerby off of IH-35.
Okay, I just crossed the Webb interchange over here by mile marker 21 and right underneath the bridge. There's a body. I wasn't sure what it was when I drove past him, but it's a person.
Is our body count suddenly rising?
We send a deputy out there to go check, and he tells me that it's another crime scene. It's a woman face down.
The officer sees Smith & Wesson expended casings.
There's .40 caliber casings again, and we were concluding that it was probably related to Melissa and Claudine's murder.
Calderon's worst nightmare is coming true. Ortiz is continuing his work.
The victim was identified as Griselda Cantu. Also worked in prostitution, also substance abuse problems.
Griselda was a mother, and she was a good person. Obviously, also addictions and the same problems like the other victims.
If Ortiz escapes that garage without being arrested or killed, more bodies are going to appear. He's on a mission.
Okay, you two guys, let's start leading the way. Let's start going to where we think this guy is. Let's do it slowly and carefully.
The SWAT team are very well trained, but so is Ortiz. He knows his way around weaponry. The commander of the SWAT team announces the standard plan: clear this place one level at a time. You drive him up. You want him up. High is easy to capture because there is no stairway to heaven.
So we used our tactical team, the SWAT team, and some troopers that went in with our SWAT team.
They formed a stack and they went up the ramp into the parking lot area of the hotel.
David Ortiz! Come out! Hey, police!
By this time, I had made my way up and I was watching from on top. I had a bird's eye view of everything going on down there.
The SWAT team clear the first level. They find nothing. They clear the second level. They still haven't found him. Is he still here? Did he somehow get out of this?
Slow down. Let me get up.
You know, one of the body cam videos, you hear the breathing. That fast-paced, hyperventilating breathing that comes with being in a high-stress situation. Every step they take, you feel that stress, thinking they're gonna be met with gunfire.
I radioed to them to make it to the top of the parking garage so we can check the rest of the parking garage. As they were finishing searching the last lot,
Hey, Captain, take a look at this.
we were told that Ortiz is posting things on Facebook. And I asked, like, he's posting them now? One of the Facebook messages he posted was, "To my wife and kids, I love you." And the other one was, "Doc Ortiz, checking out, farewell."
This is not a good thing. If he's making his final goodbyes, nothing is more dangerous than that.
Based off of what they told us that he was posting, we didn't know what we were coming up against.
SWAT's mission is to take him, dead or alive. They don't care which.
Come out!
They assume they're going to get in a gunfight. It's been 5 hours since Erica Pena escaped the clutches of the serial killer Juan David Ortiz. And now Calderon and his SWAT team hope to have him cornered in a parking garage.
We used the SWAT team searching the floor by car, under cars, behind pickup trucks, and as they were finishing searching the last lot,
there was a black truck, and Juan David Ortiz is in that truck.
Get down! Get down! Watch out, watch out.
they started giving him commands, and they took him down.
They pull him out of that truck and cuff him.
Where's the weapon at, man? Hey, where's the weapon? Huh? I don't have one.
He doesn't have a gun on his person, so he has made the decision not to die and not to kill any policemen.
There's a big sense of relief that nobody was harmed, nobody was shot, that everything worked out.
Hey, you guys want a trophy shot? No. We ain't about that, man. A trophy shot. I took him all the time, bro.
No, Juan. We're not like you. We don't do that.
They immediately put him in a car, asked me what we wanted to do with him, and I had him transported to the substation.
What was that call that you got?
We got him. We got him. Those are the first words I hear, and I just remember saying, okay, you know what, I'll let me get ready and get over there.
At that point, there was some degree of, sleep deprivation, but the case was too important to put on the back burner.
I get into one of the closed circuit rooms, and I take my seat there at the table, and I'm taking notes and just watching this thing play out.
Hey, who's the trooper I spoke, man? The trooper couldn't keep up with me, dude. Tell him he needs to work out some more, man.
He was acting actually pretty cocky. He was very proud of himself. that he was able to outrun the troopers, and that gave us a little bit of insight into his personality. Knowing that we were dealing with another cop, it was going to be more of a challenge getting him to talk. We decided to approach him calmly and build a rapport with him.
Sounds like you're pretty educated, and it looks like you were the law enforcement work out there. Why are we here?
He begins by denying any knowledge of what they're asking him about.
Please, brother, you did this.
We bring out photos of the victims. We bring out photos of the crime scene.
This is Claudine. Do y'all know what happened to her? She's dead now.
We just want to see his reaction to his work, to what he did.
But you left her? When the trooper found her, she was still talking. That's what she looked like before. I had no idea if she was nursing in the
He said he didn't know any of them. It was complete denial, so we locked him into that denial.
She happened today.
And the evidence is showing us what they have.
You guys have the evidence? Like I said, I don't recall.
I knew that this was going to be a long night based on what was going on.
You just stayed at the house? You go out?
Slowly, calmly, of course, and as carefully as we could, we were starting to confront him with his own lies.
Because the heroin syringe and a condom in there. That's in your truck. With your .40 caliber pistol and your bloody boots.
We found where the gun was, which was in the door panel.
Calderon is pushing his buttons and telling him how much they know about this case and why he will not escape punishment for this. You're just a killer like anybody else, and we're going to hammer you flat.
JD, what not cases? Got the bullets. Where's the bullets?
You're getting past his defensive shield, and you're getting to him.
JD, look at me. Can you please take this off? I'm not going to attack you.
When he asked that question, I'm thinking to myself, take the handcuffs off. Take the handcuffs off. The guy wants to talk. I turn to everybody who's in that room and I say, guys, get ready. Here it comes. And from there, the floodgates open.
Take her out.
He begins to tell us that he did know Melissa and that it's a person he had picked up before.
Can you just buy me something, a drink, buy me something to eat? I'm really bad right now. So we're going, start with.
He says they would have gone and bought some heroin. And she took and injected herself in his truck.
Yeah, she's flat out. Complete deep sleep. Driving around.
At one point, he said she started coming to, and she became belligerent.
And then she's all like,
He said that she was aggressive. She started to insult him.
They told Calderon she became too pushy. She needed to go away. Well, all right then.
He pulled over to let her go to the bathroom. He said that at that point, he saw the opportunity.
Did she try to assault you? Se salió. And it happened. I got in my truck and I drove straight to my house, took my little wife and kids, and I showered and I laid down.
Wow. Juan. You're really crazy.
And then I was continuing driving on Sunbed. This is where the monster came out.
What happens next is what happens to all people who become killers. Their appetite increases, and the thrill of the bloodletting is what drives them now.
I picked up this stupid chick, and they said look at top nonstop. Yeah. So she bought her heroin, whatever, and she brings up, hey, do you hear Melissa? Yeah. I've seen it on the maps. And he's all like, would it be really up for me to go see it?
She goes, you really want to go there? I'll take you there. As they're driving out there, they start to go on these desolate farm roads in the middle of nowhere. She starts to get scared.
No, dude. No, that. No, dude. No, I don't want to go after all. No. I think it's like really freaking.
She starts pointing at him, saying, it's you. You killed her.
You're probably the killer. You're about to shut. You're probably. Get out of my truck.
She was trying to run away, and there had been a struggle. To me, it was not a coincidence that Claudine was killed on the 13th.
We were actively, at one point, looking for Claudine because she may have either mentioned that she saw Melissa or she knows who was with Melissa.
It's probably why he killed her. He didn't want to take any chances.
Then the next day, it was not meant to be the way it happened.
Help me.
I really was just moving around.
After Erica escaped, Juan David Ortiz goes back to his home. He takes out an arsenal of weapons, expecting law enforcement to show up.
Grab my 9mm, grab my 40 cal, start loading them. Grab my AR-15, start loading them.
Law enforcement doesn't show up. He makes a decision to go out and start hunting.
People, they don't have jobs. They're all I want to clean up the streets.
He possesses this resentment towards these workers, and his solution is to get rid of them.
He's just going to eliminate them because they don't matter. They're not human. They're insects, and they have to be stepped on. Wow.
I went on Sunday and I picked up otra chick that I never, esta I tiro que I have no idea what she is, I don't know her name.
Ends up being Wiselda Cantu. He drives north on I-35. He exits around the 22 mile marker and tells her to get off his truck.
He tells her that he's the one who's been killing the prostitutes.
I said, walk that way, take a left, walk that way, you're gonna go to that area.
He describes how she turns around and tells him, you don't have to do this. You're a good person. I want to pray with you.
Look, please, just go away, okay? I'm telling you to walk away. Just walk away, okay? Walk away.
He loses his temper because she's trying to talk him out of it.
I'm telling you to walk away. You're not listening to me.
Do you think this was like a sick game, or do you think he may have had a change of heart?
I think he was going to kill her the whole time. I think that's just a fact that he interjected in order to minimize his culpability.
All of his conversations are designed to minimize his involvement in something evil because it isn't evil. It's the right thing to do. And I had the courage to do it. Swell.
At that point in time, the proverbial question is posed, is there anyone else? And Juan David Ortiz says, there's one more that you guys don't know about.
Oh my. Juan David Ortiz has admitted to killing 3 women. But then he tells Calderon there's a 4th victim that he doesn't know about.
As soon as he started saying the location of where he left that person, they took off to go verify.
It was at 13 miles north of Laredo. There was a gravel mound of asphalt, and over to the right in the tall green grass, they were going to find the body.
The victim is 28-year-old Janelle Ortiz, no relation to the suspect. She is transgender and she has been shot in the head.
My name is Rosenda Rochelle Ortiz, and I am Janelle's youngest sister. September 16, I get that call that you don't expect to hear, that it is Janelle. And I just broke down. I couldn't handle what I heard. Janelle was 9 years older than me. Growing up in her teen years, she was already transitioning. She didn't care what other people thought about her. She was really outgoing. She had a lot of friends. She was just that type of person that you can go up to when you needed a hug, you needed someone to talk to, just someone that was there. I just had that bond with her that I would never have with no other.
By this time I know that you guys are looking for me because of Erica. All life is coming to an end.
He picked up Janelle Ortiz. He said that he started driving north toward Edge 35.
He starts looking. We're just driving. And it just starts going through. It's you, isn't it?
Janelle Ortiz asks Juan David Ortiz, "You're gonna kill me, right?" And Juan David Ortiz looks at Janelle and says, "Yeah."
He said that he was surprised that he didn't get any fight out of Janelle Ortiz.
Yeah, the truck.
And he pulls into the 13-mile marker. Janelle gets out. Juan David Ortiz walks around his truck, stands behind Janelle.
Turn around.
Shot it one time.
Gets back in his truck, drives back to San Bernardo. He leaves her body right there.
Mr. Ortiz kills 2 women in less than 2 hours. He has to kill more. He's not satisfied yet.
He was going to keep cleaning up the streets, quote unquote, until somebody stopped him.
We just need for you to cooperate with us, okay?
And luckily, those troopers were at the right place at the right time that night.
It was something I've never seen before, never in 28 years seen something play out the way it did, as descriptive and as animated as he was.
The question always becomes, why did this happen? Men hate prostitutes, in my humble opinion, because they hate themselves for doing what they do, to engage in sex for money. He made a comment, the monster in him came out. I disagree, Mr. Ortiz. You are the monster. It's not inside you. It is you.
When we found out that they had gotten the suspect, it was just shocking news for us to know that it was a Border Patrol, someone that supposedly we need to feel protected.
I really was just so in shock. Like, I couldn't believe, like, it was a Border Patrol agent. I couldn't fathom it. I was just so distraught. It was really, really surreal.
That just, like, threw me over. Like, what do you mean it's a Border Patrol agent? It was hard to grasp.
After all the carnage that Juan David Ortiz left behind, Melissa Ramirez's mom is interviewed, and she comes out there and says, I'm not in favor of the death penalty.
Y si a él le daban la pena de muerte, no iba a pagar lo que hizo. Pagando que sufra lo que hizo.
For him, it was worth going to trial so that he could maybe get a lesser charge and ultimately a lesser sentence.
It was scary walking into that courtroom, finally seeing him, who he was. I felt the urge to scream so loud, but I couldn't. I just sat there and looked at him, and my tears kept rolling down.
Sentí rabia, sentí mucho coraje, sabiendo que estaba frente al asesino de mi hija.
The truth here is that Juan David Ortiz committed capital murder. He is guilty. We were able to transport, if you will, the jury to the last moments of these victims' deaths. We also put him in the interview room with the Texas Ranger and Captain Calderon.
¿Cómo te llamas?
Erica.
Erica, ¿qué?
Erica was part of the trial, and she had a very important role to play.
Tell us about what you remember when he pulled the gun.
He just pointed it right at me, just like this.
Because of her, we were able to bring justice to the rest of the families.
Or like, I hugged her, I cried with her. Like, she's our hero, you know, and she's so strong. I don't have the right words to thank her.
Was it a unanimous verdict?
Yes, it was.
Can you please hand the verdict form to the bailiff? Verdict form. We, the jury, find the defendant, Juan David Ortiz, guilty of the offense of capital murder as charged in the indictment and as instructed in this charge.
The jury was able to arrive at him being guilty of capital murder, life without parole.
So long, Mr. Ortiz. Let's lock you up in a box and feed you bologna sandwiches for the rest of your life and see what you think of that.
I was feeling so relieved. I was like, thank God, justice was served.
I felt this relief after we got our justice, that this relief left my chest.
We got the verdict we wanted, but he ruined our life. He changed everything, you know. He caused like so much trauma.
Y todos los días, aquí lo traigo a él. Yo nunca le he deseado la muerte a nadie, ni mal a nadie, pero que me digan que ya se murió él.
Regardless of what J.D. Ortiz thought about these people, they are mothers, their sisters, their daughters, and nobody deserves to get treated the way they were treated, regardless of their lifestyle.
Melissa was just the best mother that she could be for her kids. It saddens me a lot the way people just judge you.
In life, we're not always going to make the right decisions. And sadly, weakness can take a toll on a person. And yes, Claudine took a life to the streets, but it didn't define her. She had her children, she had her family who loved her.
My mom, such a beautiful soul. Like, we all have our vices. Like, she wasn't a bad person. I try to do everything with love the way she did.
Janelle still pops up in my dreams. It's just a reminder, that she's out there looking out for us. I love you, Janelle. You're always in my heart.
No one is above the law, and no one is below the law in the state of Texas.
Court adjourned.
We were able to expose J.D. Ortiz. People like him need to be stopped, and luckily there are police all over the country who are willing to do the job.
Good police work thinks, rethinks, restarts, re-engages, always looking. And Federico Calderon is an example of that. You don't believe that? Ask Juan David Ortiz if he believes that. This season on American Detective, there are moments in criminal investigations that a bad feeling comes over you.
These are monsters. You look into their eyes and, you're coming up zeros.
That's not just a red light. That's a solar flare.
It looked like something you would see in a horror film.
I have never seen a body that destroyed.
Just when you think you've seen the worst in somebody, the next person's like, hold my beer.
A passenger in her car had been abducted.
What if our killer is a cop?
She said, please tell me it's not true. Tell me Melissa's house is not on fire.
When you get information that there's a child missing, knocks the wind out of you.
There is freshly fallen snow, and there is no physical evidence to be seen. If you think this is going to end well, you're sorely mistaken, my dear.
The mist hung heavy over the mountains that morning, clinging to the jagged rocks like a shroud. It was late November in Bergen, Norway, 1970, a time when the days were short, when the sun sank early and shadows stretched long across the land. In a valley known to locals as Isdalen, the Ice Valley, silence ruled. It was a place of eerie reputation, whispered about in stories of suicides and accidents, a place the townspeople called Death Valley. The name seemed prophetic, because what hikers discovered that day would become one of the most haunting mysteries in modern Europe. A father and his 2 young daughters had set out for a walk along the trails that wound through the valley. The path was rough, littered with stone and twisted branches, but the air was still and clear. Then, amid the quiet, they caught the acrid scent of something unnatural, the sharp, unmistakable stench of burned flesh. The father's brow furrowed, and he urged his daughters to stay close as he followed the smell. It led them off the main path into the thicket where the earth dipped. There, beneath the shadow of blackened rock, they saw it, a human body, twisted, burned, almost unrecognizable. The woman lay on her back, her skin charred, her features obscured. Around her were the remnants of a life abruptly interrupted. Fragments of clothing partially burned, melted objects scattered in the dirt, and the faint glimmer of belongings that told a story no one could yet understand. The father pulled his daughters away, shielding their eyes, and ran back toward the city to alert the police. Within hours, investigators descended upon the site, their boots crunching on frozen soil, their gloved hands lifting evidence with careful precision. What they found deepened the mystery with every step. Scattered near the body were 12 sleeping pills, brand phenobarbital, and traces of bottles that had once contained liquor. 2 plastic water bottles, a broken umbrella, and a charred passport case lay close by. Around her, they found fragments of clothing, their labels meticulously cut away. Her fingerprints, when later examined, were sanded down, as if she had deliberately erased her own identity. At her side were 2 silver spoons, the edges filed to obscure their origin. The details painted a picture not of accident, not of robbery, but of deliberate concealment. Whoever this woman was, she had wanted to vanish, or someone had wanted her erased. The body itself carried its own story. The burns were extensive, yet the posture in which she lay suggested she had not collapsed suddenly. Her arms were bent, fists clenched, as though she had struggled or prepared for death. The pathologist later reported that her lungs were filled with smoke, meaning she had still been alive as the fire consumed her. The mystery of the Isdal woman, as she came to be known, had begun, and with it, a tangle of unanswered questions that would haunt investigators for decades. The news spread quickly through Bergen, a city nestled between fjords and mountains, where secrets seemed to cling as tightly as the fog. People whispered of spies, of dark secrets carried into the valley. The Cold War hung heavily over Europe in 1970, and Norway, though often thought of as a quiet northern country, was not immune to its shadows. Bergen, home to NATO installations and naval activity, was a place where the eyes and ears of intelligence agencies were never far away. The discovery of an unidentified woman, her identity erased with almost surgical precision, stirred suspicion immediately. Detectives began their work the way they always did, with the body, with the clues, with the hope of a straightforward path. But nothing about this case was straightforward. Dental records suggested she had traveled widely, her teeth showing work from far beyond Norway. Her clothing, expensive and foreign, hinted at someone of means, someone who moved across borders with ease. Hotel receipts uncovered later revealed she had stayed in multiple lodgings across Norway in the weeks before her death, always under different names, always checking in with false identities. Witnesses described her as elegant, striking, speaking multiple languages fluently, German, French, Flemish, perhaps Italian. She was seen often with wigs, changing her appearance as though her very survival depended on disguise. The police pieced together fragments of her movements. She had checked into hotels under names like Fenella Lorch and Claudia Nielsen. In one place, she had claimed to be a traveling antiques dealer. In another, a businesswoman from Belgium. She paid in cash, carried little baggage, and left behind almost nothing that could tie her to a home, a family, a country. The deliberate cutting of clothing labels, the filed-off identifiers on her belongings, spoke of someone carefully constructing a life of shadows. She was a woman who existed everywhere and nowhere at once. Witnesses recalled her beauty, tall, with striking cheekbones, an aura of mystery. Men remembered her eyes, intense and searching, as though she measured everyone she met. Women described her as stylish but distant, always polite, yet never familiar. She dined alone in restaurants, ordered simple meals, but always seemed to be watching, listening. Some said she met with men in suits, spoke quietly in corners, passed envelopes. Others said she wandered alone through Bergen streets, gazing at shop windows but rarely buying anything. The theory that she was a spy grew almost immediately. In 1970, Europe was a chessboard of espionage, its pieces moved by invisible hands in Washington, Moscow, London, and Berlin. Norway, with its access to the North Atlantic, its proximity to the Soviet Union, and its NATO facilities, was a crucial square on that board. To some, the Isdal woman was not a tragic drifter or a lonely traveler. She was an agent, caught in the deadly game of intelligence, silenced before she could reveal secrets she carried. But speculation could not answer the question that burned in every investigator's mind. Who was she? The autopsy revealed more fragments of the puzzle. She had consumed between 50 and 70 sleeping pills before her death, though the concentration in her blood suggested she had not died from overdose alone. The combination of pills, alcohol, and fire created a scene almost too complex for coincidence. Was it suicide? The pills suggested it. Was it murder? The fire, the erased identity, the sheer strangeness of her behavior suggested otherwise. The lead detective, Knut Havik, would later admit that the case felt unlike anything he had ever encountered. He stood in the morgue, staring down at the charred remains of a woman who had gone to such lengths to vanish, and felt the cold weight of mystery settle into his bones. She was not just a body. She was a question, and every answer seemed to dissolve into more questions. Investigators traced her to several hotels in Bergen and Stavanger. They found a suitcase in a railway station left under lock and key. Inside were clothing items, wigs, cosmetics, and prescription glasses. Again, every label was cut away, every potential clue stripped of its origin. But in the lining of the suitcase, they found something extraordinary. Coded notes, scribbles that seemed to mark dates, times, and places. To some, it was the logbook of a spy. To others, the diary of a woman meticulously charting her travels. To everyone, it was another enigma. As the investigation deepened, her movements became clearer, but her identity remained a void. Witnesses recalled her speaking German with an accent that suggested she might be from the south, perhaps Bavaria. Others swore she spoke fluent French, her voice smooth and practiced. One hotel clerk said she claimed to be from Belgium, another from Luxembourg. Yet every passport she carried was false, every name invented. She was a woman who had lived many lives, but none of them her own. The case gripped Norway. Newspapers ran headlines that mixed horror with fascination. Who was this woman of mystery? Was she a spy, a criminal, a lost soul? The nation speculated wildly, each rumor feeding into the next. Some believed she had been caught in an affair with a powerful man, silenced to protect his reputation. Others believed she had stumbled upon military secrets, punished for knowing too much. There were even whispers of cults, of ritual, of the valley itself cursed by death. But for the investigators, the evidence was all they had, and the evidence pointed to something deliberate, something hidden, something dangerous. The Isdal woman's death was not an accident of fate. It was the ending of a story no one had yet deciphered, a story that stretched across borders, across identities, across the dark divide between the known and the unknown. And as winter deepened in Bergen, and the snow began to fall upon the mountains, the people of Norway understood that this mystery was not one that would fade with the season. It was a mystery that would grow darker the more light they tried to shine upon it. A mystery that would cling to the Isdalen Valley for decades, haunting every person who dared to ask the question, who was the woman who burned in the ice valley? The discovery of the suitcase at Bergen railway station shifted the investigation from a puzzle into a labyrinth. It was as though the woman had left behind a second body, not of flesh and bone, but of fragments and shadows, a carefully constructed version of herself stitched together from wigs, clothing, and notes written in a private code. Detectives crowded around the suitcase as though it were a coffin, each item they lifted adding weight to the enigma. There were clothes, all with their labels removed, wigs in different shades, styled to change her appearance at will, prescription glasses without lenses that appeared to be props rather than necessities, a tube of eczema cream traced back to a prescription written by a Belgian doctor, though the name on the slip was yet another alias, and the coded notes, lines of letters and numbers scrawled on paper, cryptic enough to seem meaningless, yet deliberate enough to scream purpose. The police brought in cryptographers, hoping to unravel the mystery of the codes. What they discovered seemed less like random scribbles and more like a travel log. The letters and numbers corresponded to train routes, hotel stays, and destinations across Norway. Each alias matched a piece of the puzzle. Geneva, Hamburg, Oslo, Stavanger. It was not the diary of a tourist. It was the itinerary of a phantom. Witnesses began to emerge, their memories painting a portrait of a woman both unforgettable and impossible to hold. In Stavanger, she had checked into the Hotel St. Svithun as Claudia Tielt. The clerk recalled her as striking, with high cheekbones and a confident air. She spoke fluent German and a little broken Norwegian. She kept to herself, ordering room service and walking the streets alone. One day she was seen in the company of a man in a dark suit, their conversation hushed, their glances sharp. In Bergen, she stayed at the Hotel Rosenkrantz under another name. Staff remembered her elegance, always dressed immaculately, her hair styled, her movements deliberate. Yet she seemed distant, detached from the world around her. A maid recalled entering her room and noticing wigs laid out on the dresser, as if the woman were rehearsing identities. She smelled faint traces of perfume mixed with something sharper, medicinal. Everywhere she went, she paid in cash. Everywhere she stayed, she left little behind. No fingerprints, no trace of family, no evidence of an ordinary life. She was a ghost, traveling through Norway's cities, leaving behind only the faint outlines of a story that made no sense. The theories multiplied. Some believed she was a courier for a foreign intelligence service, carrying messages between agents under the cover of a tourist. Others whispered that she was part of an illegal trade: diamonds, weapons, information. The Cold War gave fertile ground to paranoia, and Norway, with its NATO facilities and radar installations, was fertile ground for spies. The woman's movements often aligned with military testing schedules. Witnesses remembered seeing her near Bergen's harbor when naval ships were docked. The possibility of espionage seemed less like fiction and more like inevitability. But her behavior did not fit neatly into any single explanation. In some hotels, she seemed nervous, almost paranoid, constantly glancing over her shoulder. In others, she appeared calm, even playful, sharing brief conversations with staff and laughing softly. At times, she looked like a woman in control, at others like someone on the run. She was both commanding and vulnerable, glamorous and fragile. The contradictions only deepened the fascination. The investigation turned outward, across borders. Interpol was contacted, descriptions sent out, sketches circulated, but no one came forward to claim her. No missing persons report matched her description. No family stepped into the light to say she was theirs. It was as though she had erased her life long before death came for her. Detectives pursued the Belgian prescription, traveling to Brussels to track down the doctor whose handwriting appeared on the cream tube. The name given was false, but the cream had indeed been dispensed. They learned only that the woman who collected it was elegant, foreign, and paid in cash. It was another fragment of the same shadow, real enough to prove she existed, elusive enough to prevent her from being known. In Bergen, whispers grew louder. People claimed to have seen her dining with military personnel, speaking quietly with men who were never identified. Some said she visited remote areas near secret installations, watching, taking notes. Others remembered her at the theater, attending performances alone, sitting in the dark with her hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes glinting in the glow of the stage. She was everywhere, yet nowhere. The police interviewed a fisherman who swore he had given her a ride near the Hardanger Fjord weeks before her death. He described her as anxious, constantly turning her head as though afraid of being followed. Another witness claimed she had spoken of going south soon, of leaving Norway entirely. But the next trace of her was not on a train or a ship. It was in the valley. Her body burned almost beyond recognition. The case seemed to move in circles. Every new lead opened another question. Every answer contradicted another witness. The coded notes, the aliases, the disguises, they all pointed to purpose. Yet the final act of her life suggested chaos. If she was a spy, who silenced her? If she was running, from what? If she took her own life, Why leave behind so many fragments of a story designed to be found? Even the way she died seemed caught between worlds. The pills and alcohol suggested suicide, but the fire suggested staging, perhaps destruction of evidence. Her fingerprints had been sanded away, a meticulous, deliberate act, and yet the suitcase, filled with disguises and notes, had been left in a railway station locker as though waiting to be discovered. It was as if her entire existence had been a performance, and death was the final act she could not script. The investigators felt the pressure of something larger than themselves. Each step forward brought with it the sense of unseen eyes watching. In hushed conversations, they admitted their fear, that this case would never be solved, not because they lacked skill, but because it touched threads too dangerous to unravel. Threads tied to governments, to intelligence agencies, to powers that preferred silence to truth. And in the city of Bergen, ordinary people began to weave their own legends. The Isdal woman became a figure of fascination, whispered about in cafes and classrooms, her story retold with embellishments that made her more ghost than flesh. Children dared each other to walk into the ice valley after dark, to see if her spirit lingered among the rocks. Adults shook their heads and muttered of spies and secrets, warning each other that some stories were too dangerous to speak aloud. But for the detectives who had seen her body, who had lifted the charred remains of her belongings, who had traced her shadow through hotels and stations, she was not a ghost. She was a woman, with a face, a voice, a life. And yet, as the days turned into weeks and the trail grew colder, she became less a person and more a symbol, a riddle carved into the heart of Norway, a reminder that some truths slip through our fingers no matter how tightly we try to hold them. The body was eventually buried in Bergen, in a simple grave marked only by the date of her death. No name, no family, no mourners beyond the detectives who carried her coffin and the priests who said the words of farewell. Yet even in that quiet ceremony, the sense of unease lingered. It felt less like an ending than a pause, as though the mystery of the Isdal woman had only just begun, and indeed it had. Because every step of the investigation, every coded note, every false name, every whispered sighting, had opened a door into darkness that no one could fully close again. The grave they dug for her in Bergen was shallow, simple, almost apologetic. A rectangle of earth that swallowed more questions than it ever answered. When her coffin was lowered, it was lined with zinc, sealed against time, a practical measure that meant her body might one day be exhumed if truth ever demanded it. There were no flowers from family, no photographs placed on top, no names whispered with tears. Only detectives, priests, and a few city officials stood in the biting November wind, listening as words of farewell were spoken for a woman who had lived and died in silence. Her grave bore no name, only the inscription, Død kvinne, funnet I Isdalen, 29/11/1970. Dead woman found in Ice Valley. Yet even as the soil closed over her story refused to rest. Inside police stations, the case files grew thicker, filled with sketches, witness reports, coded notes, and photographs of wigs and charred belongings. The Isdal woman was not buried. She was multiplying. In the minds of the investigators who could not let her go, in the newspapers that kept her mystery alive, in the whispers of a public enthralled by the darkness of her fate. Detectives revisited her movements with a desperation that bordered on obsession. They traced her to the Hotel Neptune, where staff remembered her walking through the lobby with striking confidence, dressed in a long black coat and carrying herself as though she belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. A waitress described her as aloof, polite but cold, her eyes darting to the entrance as though expecting someone to follow. In another hotel, she had ordered porridge for breakfast but left without touching it, her seat empty before the waiter returned. These were not the habits of a tourist. They were the gestures of a woman constantly on edge, living on the knife edge between purpose and paranoia. And then came the testimonies that made the investigators' blood run cold. A young man, a student at the University of Bergen, claimed he had met her on the street weeks before her death. She had spoken to him in German, her voice urgent, asking for directions to a local military installation. He thought nothing of it at the time, but when he saw her face in the papers, recognition struck like lightning. Another witness recalled seeing her at a NATO facility near Stavanger, watching silently from a distance, her eyes fixed on the antennas that clawed at the sky. These accounts gave shape to the theory that had been brewing from the beginning: espionage. The Cold War was not a distant shadow in 1970. It was a storm that rattled Europe's windows, a silent war of information where borders were crossed not with armies, but with whispers, secrets, and coded notes. Norway, with its proximity to the Soviet Union and its NATO presence, was a hotbed of strategic significance. Foreign agents moved through its cities like ghosts, collecting fragments of information, trading knowledge in hotel lobbies, vanishing into anonymity. The Isdal woman seemed carved directly out of that shadow world. Yet espionage, while seductive as explanation, carried no proof. The police had no evidence tying her to any intelligence service, no agency willing to admit she was theirs. Her coded notes might have been travel logs, but they could just as easily have been something darker. Her wigs and disguises could have been tools of a spy, or the eccentric defenses of a woman fleeing from something personal, something intimate, something unbearable. The ambiguity only deepened the dread. Back at the forensic lab, the pathologists wrestled with the contradictions of her death. The sleeping pills, between 50 and 70 swallowed, were enough to make her unconscious. The alcohol in her stomach added weight to the theory of suicide. But the fire? Who sets themselves alight as a final act? The burns covered most of her body, but traces of accelerant were found on her clothing. It seemed staged, as though someone had tried to obliterate not only her life, but her very identity. The irony was cruel. In trying to erase her, they had made her unforgettable. The detectives knew the case was slipping beyond the reach of ordinary investigation. International agencies were contacted, photographs sent across borders, yet silence came back each time. No one admitted to knowing her. No family claimed her. No government acknowledged her existence. It was as though she had been deliberately orphaned from the world, a woman who belonged to no one. In Bergen, ordinary people began to claim sightings of her ghost. Children whispered of a tall woman with burning eyes walking through the fog of Isdalen at night. Hikers swore they smelled smoke when they passed near the site of her death. In cafes, her name became a cautionary tale, a story told in hushed tones. Do not trust strangers, for they may vanish like the Isdal woman. The legend was taking root, intertwining fact and fear until they were inseparable. But in the police archives, the reality was far colder. They discovered she had stayed in at least 9 different hotels in Norway, each under a different name. In one, she had given her nationality as Belgian. In another, she claimed to be from South Africa. In yet another, she was German. She shifted her story with every check-in, like a chameleon adapting to the background. She carried herself with authority, but her lies were too consistent to be accidental. It was a performance rehearsed, perfected. One clerk recalled her writing her name with a flourish, pausing briefly before signing, as though weighing which identity to use that day. Another described her perfume, strong, foreign, lingering in the room long after she left. A shopkeeper remembered her buying boots, paying in cash, her accent slipping from German to something he could not place. Each memory was vivid, but together they formed only a collage of contradictions. As the weeks dragged on, frustration grew. The detectives found themselves staring at the coded notes late at night, their eyes blurring, convinced the answer lay hidden in the simple strokes of pen on paper. Some believed it was a cipher, a key to unlock her life. Others argued it was merely her shorthand, a personal system of order. But whatever truth the notes contained, it never revealed itself. They remained stubborn, silent, like the woman herself. And then there was the most unsettling detail of all. Days before her death, she had checked out of one hotel and told the staff she was heading south, out of Norway. Witnesses remembered her boarding a train, her luggage carefully arranged, her coat buttoned tightly. She seemed calm, composed, as though her path was clear. But instead of leaving the country, she turned back toward Bergen, back toward the valley where she would meet her end. It was a choice that defied explanation. Was she lured back by someone she trusted? Was she following orders? Or had she already decided that her story would end there, in the cold shadow of the mountain? The contradictions piled higher than the evidence itself. She was both victim and architect of her own disappearance, both terrified and in control, both someone and no one. The Isdal woman was no longer just a mystery. She had become a paradox, a mirror in which everyone saw a different reflection. Spy, fugitive, victim, phantom. And as winter deepened and the snow pressed down on Bergen's rooftops, the investigators felt the cold certainty that the woman in the valley was not only unknown, she was perhaps unknowable. The case files grew, the photographs yellowed at the edges, but the truth remained elusive, slipping away like smoke in the frost. The Ice Valley, already called Death Valley by locals, now carried a new legend, darker than any before. And those who had seen her body, those who had touched the evidence with their own hands, would carry the weight of that mystery for the rest of their lives, haunted not only by the death of a woman, but by the realization that sometimes death is not an end, but the beginning of a story that never lets go. The detectives who carried the Isdal woman's file began to feel as though they were being drawn into a play where they themselves were not in control of the script. Each time they thought they had found a thread to pull, it tightened into a knot. Each lead collapsed into ambiguity, as if the woman's life had been designed to resist explanation. And yet, the deeper they looked, the stranger and more sinister the case became. It was in those weeks after her burial that one of the most chilling testimonies surfaced. A man came forward to say he had seen her in Bergen only days before her death. She was walking through the lobby of Hotel Neptune, dressed in a stylish trench coat, her hair styled neatly, her demeanor calm. She was not alone. A tall man in a dark suit walked beside her. They spoke quietly, almost conspiratorially, their eyes darting to the corners of the room as if checking for watchers. The man claimed he noticed her because she seemed so striking, so polished, like someone who belonged in the pages of a magazine rather than a hotel lobby in a gray Norwegian winter. He did not know who she was, but when he saw her photograph in the papers after her death, he felt an icy certainty. It was the same woman. Other witnesses described her dining with unknown men, her conversations hushed, her body language tense. One said she appeared to pass a small envelope across the table. Another swore she had overheard her speaking German with a strong foreign accent, her tone sharp, businesslike, as if every word was measured. The men she met were never identified. They vanished back into the fog of Bergen's streets, leaving only shadows behind. At the same time, rumors began to ripple through police circles that foreign intelligence services had taken an interest in the case. It was whispered that agents from abroad had quietly inquired about her belongings, her movements, her coded notes. Nothing was official, nothing was written down, but the detectives felt eyes on them, unseen, unspoken, waiting. Some officers began to suspect that the silence from international authorities was not ignorance, but deliberate. Perhaps she had belonged to someone powerful, and perhaps those powers preferred her story to remain buried. The suitcase continued to haunt them. The wig suggested disguise, the glasses without lenses suggested performance. It was not just that she had hidden her identity, It was that she had constructed new ones, tried them on like costumes, lived inside them for days before discarding them. Each alias was precise, each lie delivered with confidence. A woman alone with so many masks was not simply a wanderer. She was something else entirely, though what, no one could prove. And then there was the note, the one with numbers and letters that resembled a code. Analysts pored over it until their eyes blurred. Some said it corresponded to destinations on Norway's railway lines. Others argued it was a cipher for meetings or exchanges. A few believed it was not a code at all, but a deliberately planted ruse, meant to suggest meaning where there was none, a breadcrumb leading investigators into circles. Whatever its purpose, it remained stubbornly mute, like a lock without a key. As the police struggled, the press filled the void. Norwegian newspapers ran headlines that dripped with intrigue, the mystery woman of Death Valley. Columnists speculated wildly. She was a spy, a smuggler, a lover scorned, a woman hiding from a vengeful past. The people devoured every rumor, their imaginations spinning legends. In Bergen's cafes, her name was whispered alongside words like KGB and CIA. In the pubs, fishermen swore they had seen her on the docks, boarding ships that never appeared in the port records. Children dared each other to walk through Isdalen at night, listening for the sound of her voice in the wind. The detectives themselves were not immune to fear. One admitted later that he began to feel watched, his telephone line crackling with strange static during calls about the case. Another confessed he dreamed of the woman at night, standing at the foot of his bed, her face charred and unrecognizable, whispering words in languages he did not understand. The case did not only live in the files, it seeped into their bones. Yet for all the shadows, there were also flashes of humanity, details that made the Isdal woman feel painfully real. Witnesses described her smile when she briefly let her guard down, the way she tapped her fingers against the table when she was lost in thought, the tiredness in her eyes when she believed no one was watching. She was not just an enigma. She was a person, a woman who had eaten breakfast in hotel dining rooms, who had walked streets lined with Christmas lights, who had laughed at least once in the presence of strangers. Those fragments made the mystery heavier, not lighter, for they suggested that beneath the disguises and the danger, there had been a life now gone. The contradictions tormented the investigators. If she was a spy, why the sloppiness of leaving wigs and notes in a suitcase that could be traced? If she was a suicide, why erase her identity so meticulously? Why burn herself alive in a place already infamous for death? If she was murdered, why no signs of struggle beyond the burns? Why no one coming forward to silence the whispers? Every possibility unraveled as soon as it was woven. Winter in Bergen pressed harder, the snow blanketing the mountains, the valley sealed in ice. Yet the Isdal woman's story refused to be buried under the season. Journalists demanded updates. Citizens demanded answers. The police, exhausted, admitted privately that the trail was growing cold, that the truth might never be found. And still, the shadow of espionage loomed. Norway was a small country, but it sat on a fault line of global power. In that era, secrets were worth lives, and silence was often the currency of survival. The grave on the hillside became a symbol. People began to leave flowers there, strangers who felt a kinship with the unknown woman. They stood before the stone, reading the words unidentified and feeling a chill. For some it was pity, for others, fascination. For many it was fear. Fear that someone could live among them, walk their streets, breathe their air, and yet vanish into anonymity with such violent finality. And so, in that cold Norwegian winter, a paradox crystallized. A woman who had gone to such lengths to erase herself had become unforgettable. A woman who had tried to disappear had become eternal in her mystery. The valley where she died had been feared for centuries, but now it carried her name, forever linked to her silence. The detectives closed their notebooks each night knowing they would open them again the next morning. and the day after that, and perhaps for years to come. Because the Isdal woman was not just a case. She was a haunting. And in the hush of the ice valley, where snow muffled sound and smoke once carried the scent of burned flesh, her presence lingered like a question that no one dared to answer aloud. The snow had settled thick over Bergen by the time whispers of foreign interference began to harden into something more tangible. Detectives who thought they were chasing the mystery of a single woman began to feel the tremors of a much larger story vibrating beneath their feet. They were supposed to be piecing together the identity of a victim. Instead, they found themselves tangled in the web of forces far beyond their reach. It was during these weeks that a chilling lead surfaced from an unexpected source. A Norwegian military officer, stationed near Bergen, quietly told investigators he had seen the woman near sensitive installations only days before her death. She stood on a hill with binoculars, her posture stiff, scanning the antennas and radar towers that pointed skyward like spears. When questioned, she had smiled politely and said she was just enjoying the view, but her accent, he swore, was German, and her eyes carried the kind of focus he had seen before in men trained to watch. The story could not be ignored. In the middle of the Cold War, Norway was not just a remote corner of Europe. It was the northern flank of NATO, a place where Soviet submarines prowled the icy waters and Western navies kept their ears open. To stumble upon an unidentified woman with multiple identities, traveling alone, lingering near military sites, felt less like coincidence and more like strategy. At the same time, a hotel clerk remembered her checking in under the name Vera Schloss. She had signed the registry with elegant, practiced handwriting, but hesitated briefly before writing the town of origin, Antwerp. The clerk recalled her speaking French to another guest in the lobby, her words fluent, polished, tinged with an accent he couldn't quite place. That same evening, she was seen dining with two men, both foreigners, their conversation muted, but intense. The next morning, she was gone, leaving behind only the faint trace of perfume and the impression that she had been rehearsing a part in a drama none of them understood. The detectives compared the names she used, and one pattern emerged. None of them matched any known person, but each was tied to a plausible nationality, a believable story, a cover that could withstand casual questioning. Claudia Tielt, Fenella Lorch, Vera Schloss. Each name was a mask she wore for a few days before discarding it. Each alias was precise enough to pass, but disposable enough to erase. She was a woman who seemed to have perfected the art of becoming no one. The suitcase remained a focal point, its contents spread across evidence tables like artifacts from another world. Wigs combed and trimmed with care, makeup in muted shades, expensive but practical, shoes of varying styles, all well kept, all made for long walks. And then, the most haunting detail. A piece of notepaper with cryptic markings, rows of numbers and letters that aligned eerily with her recorded travels. To some, it was nothing more than shorthand. To others, it was unmistakably a code. In that era, codes were not innocent. They were weapons of silence. But what chilled the investigators most was not the possibility that she was a spy. It was the growing realization that if she was, they were standing on ground mined with secrets they had no authority to disturb. If she belonged to the West, someone would come forward quietly, reclaim her body, erase the story. If she belonged to the East, someone would demand the files be closed. But no one came. No one claimed her. She was an orphan of the Cold War, discarded, burned, and left behind in the ice valley. And still, witnesses surfaced with fragments of her final days. A shopkeeper in Bergen remembered her buying boots, paying in crisp banknotes. She spoke English this time, clear and deliberate, her voice low. A taxi driver claimed he had driven her to the station. She had sat in silence, her face pale, her hands clenched in her lap. When he offered to help with her luggage, she declined sharply, as though touch itself were a threat. Another witness swore she had seen her at a jewelry store, looking intently at silver rings, before leaving without buying anything. Each memory was precise in its detail, yet none pointed toward who she really was. The contradictions deepened. Some described her as anxious, glancing over her shoulder, her eyes restless. Others said she carried herself with calm authority, every movement intentional. She seemed at times both predator and prey, both in control and hunted. The police files became a catalogue of opposites. Was she running from someone or toward something? Was her death an escape or an execution? And then came the most unsettling report of all. A Bergen local came forward claiming he had met the woman on the hiking trails outside the city. She had stopped him, asking in halting Norwegian about the path toward the valley. He remembered her because of her eyes, piercing, almost desperate, as though she was asking more than just directions. He pointed her toward the path, watched her walk away into the mist. Days later, her burned body was found in the very place he had described. He never forgot the look she gave him, a look he later said felt like someone already half in the grave. The investigators sat in their offices at night, staring at the evidence spread across tables, and felt a creeping dread. They had her belongings. They had her movements. They had witnesses who had spoken to her, seen her, shared space with her, and yet she remained faceless. Her life erased so thoroughly that even in death she resisted recognition. It was as though she had built her life as a riddle and carried it with her to the grave. The newspapers fed the fire. The woman without a name. The mystery of the Ice Valley. Speculation spread beyond Norway, into Denmark, into Germany, into the pages of international press. Each article carried its own theory. She was an agent, a mistress, a courier, a woman fleeing from something too dark to name. The truth remained hidden behind the silence of governments and the stillness of her grave, and in Bergen, people began to avoid the Ice Valley. The place had always carried the weight of superstition, but now it felt cursed. Parents warned their children not to wander there. Hikers spoke of the stench of smoke that seemed to linger even after the snow had fallen, of a silence heavier than any mountain air should carry. Some swore they heard footsteps behind them on the trail, only to turn and see nothing but mist. For the detectives, the Isdal woman became more than a case. She was an obsession, a presence that seeped into their sleep, their families, their daily lives. They could not let her go, because she had not let them go. Her silence was not empty. It was alive, pressing against them with the weight of secrets they were never meant to uncover. And as the winter deepened, one truth became terrifyingly clear. Whether she had chosen her death, or whether it had been chosen for her, the Isdal woman had left behind a legacy of fear that no verdict, no theory, no file could ever extinguish. The silence of official channels grew louder than any confession. The detectives, exhausted and restless, knocked at doors that never opened, sent cables that returned with replies so thin they were almost mocking. Interpol had circulated her description, yet no missing person matched. The coded notes were shared with foreign intelligence services, but answers came back empty. It was as though the world had collectively agreed not to recognize her. And the investigators in Bergen felt the weight of something unspeakable pressing against their work. Perhaps they had stumbled into a story no one wanted told, but the human mind does not surrender easily. Detectives obsessed over the smallest details, clinging to scraps as though they were lifelines. The handwriting on her hotel forms was examined again and again, magnified under lenses compared to foreign samples. Her dental records were studied, revealing treatments consistent with Central Europe. The soles of her shoes were traced to Italian manufacturers, the design modern, stylish, expensive. Every detail screamed of a woman who had moved across borders with ease, a woman whose life had been international, deliberate, transient. And yet she had ended in isolation, in a valley known as Death Valley, her body scorched until her face was erased. Theories multiplied like shadows in a dark room. Some investigators clung to the idea of suicide. They pointed to the pills, the alcohol, the evidence that she had been alive when the fire consumed her. Perhaps she had chosen to vanish in the most absolute way. Perhaps the disguises, the aliases, the lies, were all the trappings of a woman who could no longer bear the weight of herself. But others rejected this as naive. Who takes so many steps to obliterate their identity, only to leave behind wigs, coded notes, and a suitcase full of masks? Suicide may explain the act, but it did not explain the performance that preceded it. The idea of murder grew more persuasive. Perhaps she had been an agent caught in a trap, silenced by those who could not risk her secrets being revealed. Perhaps she had been lured to the valley by someone she trusted, someone who poured the liquor, who pressed the pills into her hand, who lit the flame that devoured her. If so, that someone had walked away into the mist, leaving her to be discovered by children. It was a theory that gnawed at the detectives because it explained the fear witnesses had seen in her eyes, the nervous glances, the constant sense of pursuit. And then came the whispers of romance, of betrayal. Some believed she had been entangled with a powerful man, military, political, perhaps both. And her death was the price of secrets shared in intimacy. Others imagined her as a double agent, caught between allegiances, burned not only in flesh, but in reputation. Her erasure, the punishment of betrayal. In the fog of the Cold War, love and espionage were often intertwined, each kiss carrying the taste of danger, each glance potentially fatal. But the most chilling thought of all was this. What if her death was not meant to solve anything, but to create the very mystery that consumed them? What if her burned body, her erased identity, her scattered disguises were the message? A warning to others, a demonstration of power, a riddle designed not to be answered, but to haunt. If that were true, then the detectives were not investigators but audience, forced to watch a performance whose meaning they were never meant to grasp. Years later, one of the detectives admitted in an interview that he often dreamed of the woman. In his dreams, she was not charred, but alive, standing in the ice valley with her coat pulled tightly around her, her eyes fixed on him. She did not speak, but he felt accused, as though she blamed him for failing to give her back her name. He woke, with sweat on his brow, the image of her clenched fists lingering in his mind. He was not alone. Others who had worked the case carried it like a burden, a weight that pressed on their lives long after the file was closed. And yet the file was never truly closed. It remained in archives, revisited by journalists, by authors, by curious amateurs who tried to stitch the fragments together. Each new pair of eyes added theories, added speculation, but no truth. The grave in Bergen became a pilgrimage site for mystery seekers, its simple inscription visited by those who longed for answers, those who laid flowers for a stranger they would never know. The anonymity of her grave was a wound in stone, a reminder of how little we sometimes know even about those who walk among us. For the people of Norway, the Isdal woman became part of the national imagination. She was whispered about in classrooms, referenced in novels, invoked in late-night conversations when the snow pressed against windows and fear crept into rooms. Some called her a spy, some called her a victim, some called her cursed. But everyone agreed she was unforgettable, and in the decades that followed, her presence seemed to grow, not fade. New generations discovered her story and felt the same chill that gripped Bergen in 1970. Each retelling kept her alive, not as a person, but as a specter, a ghost of the Cold War, a woman who had lived and died in shadows. The investigators who first touched the case had grown old, many gone to their own graves, yet none carried closure. For them, the Ice Valley was not simply a location on a map. It was a wound in the earth, a place where truth was buried with fire and smoke, where a woman had been erased so completely that her very absence became eternal. And as the years rolled forward, one thought persisted, unsettling and sharp. Somewhere, someone had known her name. Somewhere, someone had spoken to her for the last time, seen her alive before the valley claimed her. Somewhere, someone held the key. But whether through fear, loyalty, or indifference, that key was never turned. The silence remained absolute. The Isdal woman was no longer a body in a morgue. She was a riddle written into the DNA of a country, a mystery that no time, no investigation, no theory could dissolve. And the more the world tried to understand her, the more elusive she became, a shadow slipping further into the mist. The valley has long since fallen silent again, the echoes of discovery swallowed by decades of snow and mist. But silence does not mean forgetting. In Bergen, the story of the Isdal woman refuses to fade. It lingers like the fog that clings to the mountains, curling through the streets, seeping into conversations, whispering in the corners of memory. She remains not only as a body in an unmarked grave, but as a presence that has outlived her own death. Children who once heard their parents whisper of her grew into adults who now whisper the same story to their own. They describe her as a ghost walking the ridges, her eyes fixed on the ground where she fell. Hikers speak of an unshakable unease in the valley, of an atmosphere too heavy for air so thin, of the feeling that unseen eyes follow them through the rocks. It is as though the earth itself remembers what was done there. The grave in Bergen stands as both a monument and a wound. A simple stone, a line of text, Ukjent kvinne, funnet I Isdalen, 1970. Unknown woman, found in Isdalen. Visitors arrive from across the world, standing quietly before the stone, laying flowers for a woman they never knew. Some bring candles, others bring poems written in languages she might once have spoken. And in that act of remembrance, strangers try to give her what the world denied: recognition, belonging, humanity. Yet the fact that she still lies nameless is the most haunting truth of all. Through the years, journalists reopened her file, each time hoping the passage of time might loosen tongues that were once afraid. In 1995, one reporter uncovered that police had received quiet instructions to tread carefully to avoid digging too deep into intelligence connections. The implication was chilling. Perhaps the silence was not born of ignorance, but of obedience. Perhaps those who knew the truth had locked it away, choosing secrecy over justice. It was confirmation of what detectives had felt from the start, that they had been brushing against forces that did not want answers revealed. And then science joined the pursuit. In the 2000s, forensic technology brought new possibilities. The woman's teeth were examined with isotope analysis, suggesting she had grown up in Central Europe, possibly in the border regions between Germany and France. Her diet, traced in the very enamel of her teeth, revealed she had lived in several countries throughout her life. Even in science, she refused to belong to one place. She had been a traveler, her body a map without borders, her life written in movement. Later still, DNA tests attempted to trace her lineage. The results pointed to European descent, but no relatives appeared in databases. No family tree grew from her blood. Even her DNA carried the silence of erasure. She remained herself, and no one else, both defined and undefined, a puzzle of human fragments. And yet, despite the advances, despite the analysis, despite the endless speculation, her story did not grow smaller. It grew larger. The Isdal woman became a symbol of the unknowable, of the way life can vanish into the cracks of history, leaving behind only riddles. She was a reminder that even in an age of surveillance and records, a person could still walk through the world unseen, slip through borders, and disappear. The Cold War has ended. The players of that shadow game long gone or forgotten. But the mystery of the Isdal woman endures. Some still cling to the spy theory, convinced she was caught in the web of East and West, her death a quiet execution buried in the ice. Others believe she was fleeing from a personal torment, her disguise as the armor of a woman escaping something more intimate, more terrible. Still others whisper that her death was staged to frighten, to warn, to show what happens to those who betray. None of it has been proven, yet none of it has been disproven. What remains undeniable is the feeling her story provokes. To imagine her final moments, standing in the valley, the pills in her stomach, the alcohol burning in her veins, the fire consuming her body while her lungs filled with smoke, is to imagine fear so profound it silences us. Whether it was her choice or forced upon her, it was a death heavy with dread, and that dread still clings to the valley like frost. And perhaps that is why she endures, because she is not only a woman of 1970. She is every person who has vanished without explanation, every voice silenced, every secret buried. She is a reflection of our own fear of being forgotten, of disappearing without leaving behind even a name. She forces us to confront the fragility of identity, the way a life can be erased as if it never existed, leaving only mystery in its place. More than 50 years have passed since the hikers stumbled upon her body. Generations have come and gone, yet the Isdal woman remains as vivid in collective memory as if she had been found yesterday. Her story has been retold in books, in documentaries, in late-night conversations, when the world is quiet and the mind drifts toward shadows. And each retelling is not an answer but a continuation, another step deeper into the labyrinth. The detectives are gone now, their notebooks closed forever, but their frustration lingers in the archives, in the grainy photographs, in the coded notes that still defy interpretation. The ice valley remains, indifferent, its stones cold, its silence eternal. But for those who know the story, it is no longer just a valley. It is a graveyard of certainty, a place where truth itself was burned and left to ash. The Isdal woman will never walk out of the mist, will never reclaim her name. Yet she walks with us still, in the questions that gnaw, in the silence that unsettles, in the reminder that even in an age of answers, some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. Her anonymity has outlasted the Cold War, outlasted governments, outlasted those who might have known her. It has become her immortality. And so the story ends not with revelation, but with echo. The echo of footsteps in a valley where no one walks. The echo of smoke rising from a body consumed. The echo of questions whispered by generations who will never know her name. The Isdal woman is not only a mystery, she is a haunting, and she will haunt us for as long as we continue to ask who she was and why she died alone in the Valley of Ice.